GDP is in the spotlight. But what's hiding behind the number? Gross domestic product, better known as GDP, is arguably the most talked about number in all of economics. It's mentioned in news headlines, political speeches, and investment reports. But what exactly does it tell us? In this video, we'll unpack what GDP is, why it matters, and what its blind spots can reveal about the true state of an economy. So, what is GDP really? GDP is the total market value of all final goods and services produced within a country's borders during a specific period of time, usually a quarter or a year. Think of it as adding up the price tags on everything a nation produces, from smartphones and sneakers to surgeries and streaming services. There are several ways to calculate GDP, but the most common approach combines four major components: consumption, investment, government spending, and net exports. Let's quickly break those down. Consumption refers to consumer spending, how much individuals and households spend on goods and services. That's everything from your morning coffee and new clothes to doctor visits and online courses. In most developed countries, consumption makes up the largest share of GDP, often more than 60%. Investment includes business spending on capital goods like factories, machinery, and technology. It also includes residential construction, so when someone buys a new house, that's counted as investment too. Government spending represents expenditures on everything from building highways and funding public schools to paying the salaries of police officers and teachers. Net exports are simply the value of a country's exports minus the value of its imports. If a country exports more than it imports, it has a trade surplus. If it imports more, it runs a trade deficit. So why do we care so much about GDP? First, GDP serves as a broad measure of economic health. When real GDP is growing, it typically indicates that the economy is expanding. Second, policymakers rely on GDP data to guide decisions. Central banks use it to adjust interest rates and determine monetary policy, while governments may use it to justify stimulus spending or budget cuts. Third, GDP is the go-to metric for comparing economies around the world. Whether it's the US versus China or emerging markets versus developed nations, GDP provides a common benchmark. But here's the catch: GDP isn't flawless. It doesn't account for unpaid work, like parenting or volunteering, even though both contribute value to society. It also overlooks income inequality. A rising GDP can hide the fact that most of the wealth is going to a small fraction of the people. Digital services, like streaming platforms, pose another challenge. If you binge a show on Netflix, how do we quantify that experience in economic terms? Clearly, GDP struggles to capture value in the digital age. Even more critically, GDP ignores environmental costs. A natural disaster that causes destruction but boosts rebuilding efforts can raise GDP, even though the event was clearly harmful. So, where did GDP come from? The concept emerged during the Great Depression, when economist Simon Kuznets developed it as a way to measure the economy's output and the damage caused by the downturn. Over time, it evolved into a global standard, adopted by institutions like the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and the United Nations. Today, many experts argue it's time to go beyond GDP. Alternative indicators, such as the Human Development Index, combine economic data with life expectancy and education levels to offer a more holistic view. In short, GDP is a powerful but imperfect yardstick. It tells us how much we're producing and spending, offering a snapshot of economic performance. But it doesn't capture everything that affects people's lives, from inequality to well-being to environmental health. Thanks for watching. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more.